Hey, Scott Jordan here with Mark Warner and a special guest, Bill Bellick, which we'll get into in a second, for Jancast number 158, Thursday, December 7th, 2023. And December 7th, oh, well, I guess we're getting close to the holidays again. Yep. So, how's everybody doing?
Great.
Doing awesome.
Yeah, okay. Well, our special guest is Bill Bellick, and Bill, you have a unique position with both of us in that I've worked with you a lot in the past in my various roles on the ISSA board, and then Mark, you've worked even closer with Bill, right?
I
Mark?
did, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed working closely with you, Bill, when I was at the ISSA.
Yeah.
You helped me a lot in ways you have no idea, because I dropped your name all the time. And if I drop your name, everybody would pause and say, "Oh, Bill, okay."
Glad I was of some help to you. But don't forget, I also worked for you for a while. You were on our board of directors. So I
Yes,
had both the
that's true. Yes.
privilege of working with and working for you, Mark.
Yeah, yep. So your previous titles were, first off, let's start off. You've been at ISSA for 38 plus years.
Yes, sir. 38 years and change.
That's pretty impressive to be at one place for that long. You don't hear about that very often.
Yeah, these days it's certainly a rarity. I guess I have no ambition, right? It's been
Yeah,
a
we
wonderful
know better
company.
than that. We did.
Thank
So
you. Wonderful company, wonderful industry.
So your formal titles were Director of Legislative Affairs and Director of Legislative and Environmental Services, and then formerly General Counsel, and then now you're of counsel to ISSA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And you've been a godsend for me, because it's kind of like having my own regulatory advisor, because I would email Bill, what do you think about this or that? And you'd come back with an answer kind of immediately. And what a great resource. But we've had some fun. Mark pulled up a couple things. You remember back in the day when the airlines were making sanitizing claims?
Yeah,
Specifically,
absolutely.
Mark knows the story better than I do. Specifically, only in the airspace of Texas, right, Mark?
Yeah, well, it was one of our best shows. I mean, it's a show that a Jancast program that people remember. It was called Spears and Spikes. Oh my. And it was all about some of the claims that were out there. And I know that we had turned to you and said, "Yay, Bill, what's up with this?" And you were like, "Well, I don't know." I could picture you rubbing your chin going, that's kind of curious. But as it turned out, we all came to the conclusion that as long as the plane did not leave Texas, you were fine. So, and it was kind of interesting. In the end game, I'm not sure that that's even a viable product anymore. But at the time, they were the only company in the world making that claim. And it all happened during the middle of COVID, when all kinds of claims were floating around. And we were poking fun at it, and we were
to put it lightly, poking fun at it.
we put it on Germcast or germwashing.com, which was kind of like the expose website that we had for some of the ludicrous claims that we were hearing. But in the background, Bill, you didn't know it, but we were saying in the background, it wasn't in print, but it was like, Bill said. So you gave us our backbone, because we knew you had helped us with professional advice, and that was great. It was awesome.
Well, glad I could be of some help. It's certainly crazy times. There were some how should I say, marketers that took claims to the extreme, as well as some interesting products being developed and applied on the fly, literally, no pun intended in the case of the airline. But we saw some very interesting state-only exemptions being granted, as you alluded to. But I'd like to think the dust has settled and we're in a little bit more of a calmer, more deliberate.
Well, the good news is good news maybe for somebody, but bad news for others. They're still pursuing and locking people up and fining people for all kinds of misclaims. So it's nice to see that they're still pursuing them, even though they're kind of
absolutely. You know, and that's a good point, Scott. You know, the EPA may not act quickly, but when it does, and based on the evidence it has, it will act decisively, and those fines are very substantial.
Yeah, yeah. So we tried to come up with a list of all the things that maybe took place during your tenure as the, but yeah, and I just wrote down, or we wrote down a couple of them. Like one of the big ones was the debate about opening the show up to end users, and then the debate about opening the membership up to end users. And but you're probably a better person to ask. Looking back on your 38 years, what do you think was one of the big significant things from your position there, if I can put you on the spot?
Yeah, no, certainly that was a defining moment in the history of ISSA. Excuse me. You know, just to remind folks, when I joined the association, it was strictly a supply side association, distributors and manufacturers. And I think the membership was maybe around 2,000. Opening up to members was excuse me, to non-manufacturers, to cleaning service providers, was designed to provide more value to manufacturers. At least that was the goal. Whether or not we succeeded, different thing. But the change in our demographics has been tremendous. Today, as I sit here talking to you folks, our membership is now at 10,500 and above.
Wow. Yeah.
And about two-thirds of that, or around 7,000, are cleaning service providers of one nature or another. Contractors, in-house cleaning, residential cleaners are our three main groups. And so certainly that changes the nature of the services and the programs that we offer.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So we've had all kinds of changes as far as that's concerned. I mean, now looking back at it now, it's like, oh, well, that wasn't that big of a deal, but it was a huge deal back then. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Highly debated by the board. I'm sure you were involved in some of those discussions.
Yeah.
But obviously, we came down on the side of opening the show and trying to aggregate the industry, if you would, under one large umbrella, the ISSA umbrella.
Yeah, yeah. Then we had the international stuff. We started going with the Interclean over there. I mean, Roland was exhibiting at the Interclean show prior to that kind of linkage there, and then obviously afterwards as well. So that expanded stuff significantly as well.
Sure, yeah, big international presence. That was for a few years. That was a major area of growth.
Yeah.
We still have several trade shows out in the international community. Very important for us.
Okay,
so as you look towards the future, are you still intending to attend these shows?
Myself, personally,
and ISSA, like I'm hoping that I see you.
I expect I'll be out at one or two. We'll see, right?
Great.
Always appreciate a trip to Las Vegas in November. No harm in that. I look forward to it should the opportunity arise.
Yeah. Okay. So you can't tell us any like secret stuff that happened behind the scenes that you'll reveal for the first time ever to our Jancast listeners?
Well, I'm still on the payroll, sir.
Oh, so we have to get back in touch with
you. You're going to have to invite me back after January 1.
As long as your NDA is not still in place, right?
That's right, sir. No secrets, no skeletons in the closet.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to the ISSA staff, Bill, you're probably one of the best known. I'm not sure if you realize that, but you're probably one of the best known. A lot of distributors know your name because you've been a resource over the years for things like state registration fees. And, you know, you got started with the whole advocacy thing before John Noder got involved, and that gave him kind of a stepping stone to kind of move into what he's done, which is quite admirable what he's done with the fly-in and DC.
Oh, absolutely. John's a great guy. He's doing wonderful things and will continue to in the realm of advocacy. But, you know, realize that 40 years ago or 38 years ago, the needs of the industry, the association were quite different than what they are, just our demographics alone. And Scott, Mark, I really did enjoy. I'm a regulatory nerd at heart, right? And when I came on board, that's when that first wave of chemical regulations was really coming into place. And so from our perspective as an association, it gave us an opportunity to educate the industry, ensure its continued professionalism. And so we were out there training on, gosh, everything from DOT to hazard communication, DOC, pesticides, disinfectants, and so on. And a lot of relationships were established around those dialogues, training sessions, and anyway, we're proud of the work that we did back then and continue to do today, although our focus is a little bit different.
Yeah.
My memory, some of the big things beyond opening the show up to the end users, some of the stuff that was really impactful was, you know, the introduction of the GHS,
Yeah.
which happened, what was that,
Mhm.
2012-ish? So, I mean, that changed
Yeah.
all the SDSs, it changed the requirements. So that was big and impactful. And for a guy like me that made it very, very important to make available that kind of training to folks as to what they needed to know to be in compliance with GHS. For everybody in the audience, that's the globally harmonized system of safety data sheets, chemical safety. It kind of replaced what we all referred to by the nickname of the right to know laws, you know, and it changed a lot. So
Yeah.
that came along, and that was big. And I remember relying on information from you, Bill, at the time to make sure that I was on track. There were obviously others at the ISSA that were engaged with that process of making sure everybody had their T's crossed and I's dotted. But that was a big change, I think, you
Yeah.
know, for the industry, for sure.
Oh, it was huge. Yeah, just a massive change in the number of labels, the content, the whole approach to hazard communication fundamentally changed with that. So certainly that was a big defining moment for many chemical manufacturers as well as us as an association. Because
So I have a question for you that you may or may not know the answer to. But
oh,
because
please.
it's called the globally harmonized system, does that mean that 100% of the countries on planet Earth have determined that they'll comply with that? Because, Bill, if that's true, that means the cleaning industry has been able to do something that no other industry has ever done, and that was to get a complete agreement from every country in the globe. Is that
Well,
possible?
that was the goal. And as you know, when things get implemented, so even within the family of nations that agreed to abide by the GHS, there are substantial differences in definitions and what goes on the label, exceptions, etc. But it certainly did move us together, closer together in terms of similarities across labels. And then, of course, there are some unindustrialized nations that didn't sign on to it. So that leads to further lack of harmony. But, you know, all things said, it has brought more attention to that whole subject. And it has brought some uniformity to the language that's used on the label. So it has been good, but not quite as good as they had hoped.
Well, my favorite part of it, Bill, is that we've gotten down to 9 icons instead of 169 icons. And there used to be an icon of a guy that looked like, I don't know, Einstein or something with the crazy hair and had a
Sure.
slash down through it. And I was like, well, what the heck does that mean? Like, don't wear your hair this way? I had, you know, half the icons you couldn't figure out.
Right.
So we're down to like 9 that are pretty self-explanatory, I
Yeah,
think.
there were a bunch of bad emojis back then, right?
Yeah, they were.
There we go.
Well, now there's a whole industry for application software to generate the SDSs in every single language you want. And
Yeah.
all that. I mean, we're just looking at a new program now. It's not unusual to drop $30,000 a year to be able to author, you know, the new format.
Yeah, compliance has really gotten expensive. You know, I mentioned 85 briefly as maybe that first wave of regulations focused on the chemical products in our industry. But, you know, fast forward to today, and you're just seeing a whole new wave of regulations regulations emanating largely from the states, but with a lot of potential from the federal government as well. So it will portend challenges ahead in the not too distant future.
Well, we're
PFAS
yeah, that's
being a big one.
California is kind of leading the way on some of this stuff. PFAS is one of them, right?
Sure, sure.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
certainly the chemical of concern today, but
Let's tell
many
our
other
audience
issues.
what PFAS is. What is that?
Well, commonly referred to as the forever chemical and family of chemicals, I should say, and often are used in water repellent applications, aftermarket applications to clothing, jackets, and as well as introduction of those substances in the manufacturing process. Also used in fire extinguishers, and heck, it even ends up in cleaning products, sometimes unintentionally by ways of the water system, or sometimes intentionally, for example, in the case of floor finishes. But whole host of problematic issues, toxicity concerns with those substances. They persist in the environment, and now we are seeing a whole slew of laws, bills being entertained at the state level. Certainly, EPA has a focus on these chemicals, and they are essentially, to a large extent, banning their use in a wide variety of products, including cleaning products.
Well,
A
I have
lot
a
of issues.
question for you on that, Bill.
Yes.
It's always seemed quite unfair to me that the consumer market is not regulated to the degree that we as professional commercial industries involved with the cleaning industry are. We're required to provide safety data sheets. We're required to adhere to high levels of regulation. And then I hear about people running down to a box store and buying a gallon of toluene with their 13-year-old kid and walking out the door with it. And it's like, yeah, wow, like so different. We wouldn't think of offering acetones and toluenes to the cleaning industry commercially, but it's still readily available to the consumer market. So I was just curious, and I don't mean to take you off track, but kind of curious about why there is such a, a dissimilarity between regulations related to the consumer market versus what we have to adhere to as professionals in the commercial cleaning space.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the regulations that you're speaking of that give rise to this schism, if you would, are based on the markets, if you would, that existed, say, 20, 25 years ago, when there was clearly a retail sector and there's this clear distinction between the commercial sector. And as it relates to the consumer markets, please realize that really at that time, the only way manufacturers had to communicate to their customer base was that label, right? So all the regulations focused on that label. Whereas in the commercial space, the way we talk and communicate is a little bit different. So we use different tools, if you would, the safety data sheet, et cetera. So a lot of this is just kind of etched in history about the distinction between those markets. But as we all know now today, those market lines, those distinctions have blurred. I can go into Sam's Club and Costco and pick up consumer or professional products. What's important is that the manufacturers, the manufacturing organizations such as yourselves, abide by a high standard. You make these safety data sheets available to whatever market sector is purchasing those products, and you continue to abide by your high standards, labeling, safety data sheets, hazard communication. That'll stand by you well going forward in both markets.
Well, what I find the biggest difference, because I get asked about it a lot, is labeling. So, you see a lot of consumer products that they don't have to do the things that we have to do on a labeling side of it. We have to list ingredients, and we have to list EPA numbers, and we have to be crystal clear on our kill claims. And a lot of consumer products don't do that. And that's something I get asked about a lot. People will say, well, I saw at the supermarket, I could get this stuff and it killed. 82% of all the household germs. It sounds pretty good to me. And I'm like, 82%. Soap and water does about 90%. Like, come on. But we would never like make those kind of claims as a commercial, the cleaning industry supplier.
Yeah, your comments seem to be specific to the disinfectant world, and please realize as it relates to those products that need to be registered by EPA, they've got to run through the same process that you all do in the commercial and professional space.
Right.
The real differences kind of tend to occur for those products, some of our high volume products like general purpose cleaners, cleaners, degreasers, etc., that fall under OSHA's jurisdiction. Typically, that's where you can see a great variance between the consumer product label and the institutional product. And again, that unfortunately that's just born out of the state of the regulations. OSHA has updated their regulations. It's the Consumer Product Safety Commission that's really probably due, arguably, for an overhaul. But just real quick heads up to folks, if you're operating in both markets, consumer and I space, professional space, and you've got a general purpose cleaner or something along that line, your best bet is to label consistent with the Consumer Product Safety Commission in that context. That under both laws, they're acceptable in either space, professional or consumer, but certainly needs to be augmented by a safety data sheet. Typically, the labels under CPSC, of course, there's going to be exceptions, but because under the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the only way you can communicate with your customer typically is that label. So those labels typically are a little bit more information than you might get in a professional label, because in the professional side of things, those labels are supplemented by the safety data sheets, which are really supposed to be the main communicator of information. But, I agree, not a perfect world. You see a lot of differences in the labels, and that can cause confusion, misunderstanding by those who are using products. I agree, it can lead to problems.
Yeah. Well,
So,
thank you, Bill.
So I'm anxious, we're getting close to our end time, but I'm anxious to hear. So Bill, I don't know if you're retiring or completely going off the job market, but like next spring, are you going to be like, I don't know what your hobbies are, but let's say fly fishing. Are you going to be out there talking about the regulations of fly fishing and how things should properly be handled? Just to keep your mind, in tune.
I plan to keep active, but not in the regulatory space. I need a little breather, maybe about a year. Anything regulatory. No, my daughter's in grad school in New Mexico, Las Cruces. So come springtime, early springtime, Dad plans on visiting Gabrielle and enjoying some hiking in New Mexico territory. I've never really traveled through that.
Oh, nice.
State.
Yeah.
But look forward to a lot of hiking down there and engaging in some other hobbies.
Yeah. Well, time really flies.
Nice.
I remember at some meeting somewhere seeing your daughter in a stroller.
Yes.
So
yes.
that time flies, huh?
Yes, sir. 23 years old, and she's been down in Las Cruces for about 5 months now.
Nice.
Working on her PhD. So.
Wow. Excellent. Good. Well,
Wow.
Mark, any last thoughts for Bill? Any regulatory questions we can get? We only have them for like another couple weeks. I'll have to think
Yeah.
up some.
But I think I have Bill's private cell phone number. So,
Absolutely. Feel free to call. Actually, I will remain connected on a part-time basis with ISSA through 2024. So for you guys, if you have any regulatory questions, my contact info remains the same. Please.
Hey, Stab from the past, maybe I'll connect Peter Fried up with you, our old regulatory guy. I know
there we go.
I know you always had a good time talking with him, huh?
Yeah, that's a good 2-3 hour chat, right?
Okay, well,
it's really great to have you on this.
Thank you very much.
Likewise, my pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for this opportunity Take
Yeah.
care and happy holidays to you all.
Yep, you too. Have a good day and the rest of the month as well.
All right, my friends, take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
see y'all.
Thanks, Bill.